Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about the controversy over renaming the iconic Teen Murti complex in Delhi. We also give you an update on Purola in Uttarakhand, which had witnessed communal tensions since May. But first, we talk about West Bengal, which is currently engulfed in political violence over the Panchayat polls. The eastern state is scheduled to go for the local elections next month, and the nomination process for this started on the 9th of June. Now, in the lead up to it, the ruling TMC and opposition parties have resorted to violent confrontations over filing the nomination papers. And this violence has claimed 5 lives in the state so far. Among the areas most severely impacted in West Bengal is Bhangar, a town located on the outskirts of Kolkata, where 3 people have died so far. The Indian Express's Sweety Kumari tells us what she saw when she went to Bhangar.
Imagine a place which is about 20 to 30 kilometers from Kolkata was burning for last 4 days, and worst was on the last day of nomination. When we went to Bhangar, it was like in my several years of career, it was most tough assignment, I would put it like that. As we entered Bhangar near Nanapukur More, which is just close to BDO office where all the nominations were supposed to be filed, we saw a dead body lying on the road, unattended. There were no police there. Surprisingly, we came out of the car, we were looking there, and we saw after 5 minutes, police came and took the dead body.
Sweety says that the area was also witnessing bombing, but during all that time, the police were not in action.
When, there was a clash between Trinamool Congress and ISF workers, people from both sides were hurling bombs and they were open firing. There was no person who could say that police did a role or police responsibly handled the job. In fact, it was only media people who were on the spot, and no police could be seen on the side where people were bombing openly and were basically open firing. After the clashes, the situation was pacified. Definitely, there was huge deployment of forces at BDO office, and few people were also allowed to file the nomination in Bhangar.
To know more about the situation, my colleague Utsa Sarmin speaks to Sweety in this segment.
So, Sweety, can you first tell us why are we witnessing such violence in Bengal before this Panchayat polls?
So violence during polls in Bengal is here for decades. Like, it is not something very new or something that has been discovered right now. Since the left front regime, political clashes, violence and polls go side by side in the state. But this time we saw an early entry of the violence. Like, during the nomination itself, we have seen lot of deaths. Like, when I say lot of deaths, they are definitely not all the deaths are on record that they are connected to the Panchayat polls. But at least as far as my information goes, 5 deaths have already been confirmed during the 6 days of Panchayat poll nomination. So basically, opposition has been alleging that from day one, ruling Trinamool Congress have been resorting to violence and intimidation for the July 8 polls. We all know that our Panchayat poll will be held on July 8. So opposition have been claiming that their leaders, their prospective candidates are not being allowed to file nomination. Nomination is the basic thing in a democracy. So it is very surprising that there are violence during nomination filing, because it should be a very peaceful and a normal procedure where a candidate should be allowed to file nomination. That is his basic right. So it is basically an allegation from opposition party against the ruling Trinamool Congress that they have an habit of making it look like uncontested poll, and they are not allowing their candidate to file nomination, and hence the violence.
Right, and during this time, the opposition has also been resisting and filing nominations despite all this, right?
Yes, so when I say that this time, we witnessed an early entry, unlike the previous 2 Panchayat poll in 2013 and 2018, when the ruling party had total on-ground control. This time there had been strong and stubborn retaliation and resistance from the opposition force. Like we saw in Bhangar, the ISF people retaliated or was as violent as the TMC supporters were. And we have seen that similar retaliation we are seen from the Congress in Murshidabad. So because of stubborn retaliation and resistance from the opposition party, I think we are seeing an early political violence in run-up to Panchayat polls.
And taking a note of all this violence, a PIL was also filed in the Calcutta High Court. So could you tell us what happened as a result of that?
Yes, so basically, after this Bhangar violence, which was the last day of nomination, June 15th, after the violence during the day, there was a hearing against the PIL filed by leader of opposition Shubhendu Adhikari, and even Congress MP Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary had filed a PIL seeking central force in the state. The division bench led by Chief Justice of Calcutta High Court had directed the Election Commission in West Bengal to request the deployment of central paramilitary forces in all the sensitive districts. Sensitive, so there were 7 districts marked as sensitive, and it was told that paramilitary force should be deployed there. But the Calcutta High Court ordered after the Bhangar violence that there should be central forces all across the state, and it asked the State Election Commission to send a requisition for the same within the 48 hours of the order. Now, the recent update is the West Bengal State Election Commission, along with the state government, has moved the Supreme Court challenging the Calcutta High Court's order for the deployment of paramilitary forces across the state during Panchayat polls.
Okay, and you mentioned that the police was basically a mere spectator when the Bhangar violence was taking place. But do we know how the government is reacting to what is happening in the state?
So what we have seen is state government has been blaming opposition party for creating all the disturbance across the state. If we analyze the previous statements of Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee and Abhishek Banerjee, TMC National General Secretary Abhishek Banerjee, we will see that they have been clearly saying that there has been the highest number of nomination if we compare it to the different state. And Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee clearly said that there was no involvement of Trinamool Congress in what happened in Bhangar and in other places. She put the blame on ISF people, and police have remained a mere spectator. There was a complete failure of law and order situation in Bengal in last 5 to 6 days of nomination.
And Sweety, you earlier mentioned that while Bengal has always witnessed political violence, this time it has started early during the nomination phase. So can you tell us why these Panchayat polls are such a big deal that we are seeing so much violence because of them?
Yeah, so Panchayat poll is a litmus test for both TMC and BJP. BJP is the main opposition in the state, we all know, ahead of 2024 elections. We know that there'll be Lok Sabha election in 2024, and before that, Bengal, which has around 42 parliamentary seats. It is very important for BJP to establish its power or establish its on-ground control in the state so that they can even pitch or they can get more numbers when it comes to Lok Sabha election. In 2021, we saw that how there were tall talks by BJP, but in terms of numbers, we saw that TMC made a clear sweep in assembly election. So post-assembly election, definitely things have changed. But time will tell that how BJP is going to perform. It is the main opposition in the state after all. But all eyes will be on Panchayat poll to see, in which direction the political wind is blowing. And that is the thing that people are keeping a watch on. And most, because 2024 elections are ahead and BJP has been constantly targeting ruling Trinamool Congress on different issues from corruption to failure of law and order situation in Bengal. So strategies of opposition parties are very clear that they are keeping ruling Trinamool Congress under attack in terms of corruption and other cases. The central agencies have also been acting, very actively against the ruling Trinamool Congress. So overall, it is a litmus test for both TMC and BJP, and it is basically a great opportunity for BJP to get in good books of voters of Bengal. And it is also a test for TMC to see whether they still rule the heart of the people in Bengal despite such corruption charges or not. So it is basically a acid test for all the parties.
And next, we speak about the controversy surrounding the historic Teen Murti complex in Delhi, which is famously associated with India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru.
So, Teen Murti House was the official residence of India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. for about 16 years. And so it has always been associated with him.
That is the Indian Express's Divya A.
This specific building was built in the 1920-1930 time by Lutyens as part of the Lutyens' imperial capital. And Teen Murti at that time was called the Flagstaff House, and it was the official residence of the Commander-in-Chief of the British Armed Forces in India. But after independence, in the August of 1948, it became the official residence of Prime Minister Nehru, and he lived there for almost 16 years until the day of his death in May 1964. And soon after, as a tribute to him, the government decided that the Teen Murti house should be dedicated to him and house a museum and a library as a memorial to him.
And since then, for nearly 6 decades, the iconic Teen Murti complex has housed the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. But last week, the NMML, which is the society that manages the library, decided to rename it as the Prime Minister's Museum and Library. And this resulted in a huge controversy, with the opposition leaders lashing out at Prime Minister Modi and calling the decision petty.
You don't demean your first Prime Minister, and at the same time you include everybody. But unfortunately, that spirit of compromise seems to be missing. The original place where he had himself lived at one time, which was a memorial that named for him for more than 50 years, now suddenly you want to change it. It seems petty. And the pettiness is what I think...
Here, Divya tells us the genesis of the controversy.
After the Modi government came into power in 2014, so 2 years after that, this germ of an idea of turning it into a Prime Minister's museum was, mooted. So it was said that in the same complex, a museum dedicated to all Prime Ministers of India so far will be built.
At that time, the idea was not to change the name of the museum, but to build another building inside the complex and to call it the Museum of Prime Ministers.
As was expected, the idea met with fierce criticism and opposition from Congress and, in fact, many political parties. And former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh even wrote a letter to PM Modi, and he raised concerns over an agenda to change the nature and character of the Nehru Memorial and the entire Teen Murti complex, which was always associated with Nehru.
After the opposition's criticism, the then Culture Minister Mahesh Sharma said that no part of the Nehru Memorial Museum would be touched during or after the construction of the new museum.
He clarified that the new museum will be a separate building which will come up in the complex, and there can be no controversy over the ownership of the land since it belongs to the government. So the dissent was quelled like that.
But despite Mahesh Sharma's assurances, within a fortnight of the project being launched, the government made major changes to the 34-member NMML society, which, like we mentioned earlier, is tasked with managing the institute. And in October 2018, the centre appointed a host of new members to the society and replaced some existing ones.
Members are nominated by the government of the day. So the administration is very political. Right now, it has 29 members, out of which, besides the Prime Minister as the President and the Defence Minister as the Vice President, we have 6 other union ministers as its members. Besides, there are also other people like anchor Arnab Goswami and IGNCA President, Member Secretary Sachidanand Joshi as its members. So they are mostly the people who are associated or connected with the government or the right-wing ideology.
And then last week, this NMML society decided to officially drop Nehru's name from the complex. So from now, the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library will be called the Prime Minister's Museum and Library, or the Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya.
So the existing Nehru Museum is now become the block 1 of the overarching entity called Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya. It is now integrated as just another block of the same building. So now everything is governed by the entity called Prime Minister's Museum and Library, which was earlier Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. So the nomenclature has changed. This was announced overnight last week, the meeting which was presided over by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, who is the president of the erstwhile NMML Society, which is now the PMML Society. The society, in fact, also 6 other union ministers as its members, like Amit Shah, Nirmala Sitharaman, Dharmendra Pradhan, G. Kishan Reddy, and Anurag Thakur. My sources tell me that Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, was also present at this specific meeting where this name change resolution was passed.
And of course, the announcement was not received well by the opposition, in particular by the Congress.
So once this came in the public domain, the Congress was, as was expected, was quick to react. They called it a petty act. They even lashed out personally at Prime Minister Modi. Like Congress leader Jairam Ramesh said that pettiness and vengeance, thy name is Modi, and he was called like a small man overburdened by his insecurities. Even Mallikarjun Kharge said that BJP has no history and they are just trying to erase the history that others may have.
But the BJP stood its ground and said that its decision was entirely apolitical. Their argument was that all prime ministers should be honoured and their contributions should be put on display.
So BJP President JP Nadda said that it's a classical example of political indigestion and Congress's inability to accept a simple fact that there are leaders beyond one dynasty who have served and built our nation. In fact, they also say that all the other prime ministers that India had after Nehru, besides Atal Bihari Vajpayee, they have all been associated with Congress in some way or the other. Either they have been Congress prime ministers like Manmohan Singh, Indira Gandhi, or they have been like erstwhile Congress members or something. And in fact, Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the only BJP leader who became a prime minister. So it is a political move. It is just a prime minister is an institution and not a person.
And in the end, we give you a quick update on Uttarakhand's Purola as the town slowly gets back to normalcy after the communal tensions. Last week on the show, we spoke to the Indian Express's Avnish Mishra about how communal tensions were unfolding in Purola, where Hindu right-wing groups had called for Muslims to leave the town after an alleged case of elopement. Avnish had told us more about the case.
This case is of May 26, and according to the allegations made, a Muslim guy, Ubaid Khan, and a Hindu guy, Jitendra Saini, they kind of tried to abduct a minor Hindu girl. And after that, some locals claimed that they caught these people red-handed, and after that, they informed some local right-wing organizations and also the local police. After that incident, an FIR was registered against these two people under the sections of POCSO and IPC Act.
In Purola, which is 140 kilometers away from Uttarakhand, Muslims are in the minority.
If we talk about the population here, so most of the Muslim families living in Purola were not exactly residents of this place. They did not have their own houses, and most of them had rented shops or rented houses at this place. So what I have been told that there are around 200 shops in total in Purola area, and out of those shops, just around 35 to 40 shops belong to Muslims. And even in that, just around 5 to 6 families have their own houses and shops in this particular area.
And after the incident, Hindu right-wing organizations claimed that this is a case of love jihad and asked Muslims to leave the town. Now, this had happened despite the police saying that the case had no love jihad angle to it and that the minor girl only spoke to the two men to ask for directions. But since the incident, the Muslim traders had shut their shops after a poster was pasted outside the Muslim-run shops in the area, which asked them to leave Purola or they would face consequences. There were also demands for verification of all outsiders by local trader unions. The Hindu right-wing groups, in fact, called for a Panchayat to amplify the call that Muslims should leave the town. Though the Panchayat didn't take place because Section 144 was imposed in the area, the situation was still volatile. However, after remaining closed for over 20 days, some of the shops belonging to Muslim traders in Purola reopened on Saturday amid heavy police deployment. Mohammad Ashraf, who runs a garment shop in the main Purola market, said, and I quote, "We opened our shops today after 21 days. The business was normal and I had around 12 to 13 customers today. Around 6 to 7 other Muslims who hadn't left the town also opened their shops. It all appears to be peaceful now, but we are still scared. It will take us some time to feel normal." Ashraf said that several Muslim shopkeepers who left the town are also expected to return in the coming days. However, over a dozen Muslim families have left the town for good. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by me, Rahel Philipose, Utsa Sarmin, and Shashank Bhargava. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.